On the 7th of December 1989, two construction workers arrived at a property in Fitzhammon, Cardiff. They were going to install something in the back garden of this house, and as they were getting their tools out of the van and starting to get on with their job, as they started to dig up the back garden to lay some turf, they discovered something very unusual. It was hard, and when they dug a bit further, it seemed to be like carpet. It was a roll of carpet buried in the garden.
Wrapped in polythene and a roll of carpet was what looked like a human skeleton.
But when they dug it up and unrolled the carpet, skeletal remains of a young female were revealed. At the time, they did not know it was a female. There was a plastic bag over the skeleton's head, and the arms had been tied behind her back.
When the police had checked out the finding, a major inquiry was launched. Within days, 80 officers had been brought in on the case, led by Detective Chief Superintendent John Williams.
We faced a dilemma at this time, having only the skeletal remains with nothing else whatsoever. We first of all sent it to an odontologist, a Dr. Whitaker of Cardiff.
Police looked at all the missing persons cases that they had on file, and it didn't seem that there was any young females that were missing that would fit that criteria. Forensic entomologists who studied insect eggs around the discovery site determined that the girl had been dead for around 5 to 10 years. When early efforts to identify the body failed, Richard Neve of the Manchester University created a clay reconstruction of her skull, of what she would look like if she was alive.
Once one's presented with the specimen, it's important to try to get information from it without damaging it initially. And so we usually use X-rays or take a radiograph like this. You can see here that inside the jawbone there are a large number of teeth that haven't yet come through into the mouth, and you can see that they are still undergoing development. We know how long it takes for that kind of root to grow, so it's obvious that from that information we could work out exactly how old this individual was when they died.
He was able to tell us the body was that of a female. It was probably of a young girl aged about 15 and a half to 16 years of age.
It wasn't much to go on, but the police now knew not just the victim's age, but height, sex, and approximate date of death. And they began the laborious task of tracing everyone who'd lived in any of the dozen bedsits, 27 and 29 Fitzhammon Embankment, where the body had been found. Above all, did you live opposite Cardiff Arms Park across the Taff at bedsits in Fitzhammon Embankment? Detectives are determined to find everyone who lived here in the late 70s or early 80s, especially if you stayed in numbers 27 or 29.
This reconstruction, along with a comparison of DNA samples from the victim, made the identification possible.
Neve explains how the victim's face was recreated.
The first thing to do is, of course, to prepare the skull so that the face can be built on it. Then to mark 21 points over the face, and these are the sites from which measurements have been taken of soft tissue thickness. And holes are drilled in here and pegs inserted, so that means that when the face is built over the skull, it is not just a matter of imagination, it is done quite deliberately.
This turned out to be a striking likeness. You may not have known this girl by name, but do you recall her from the early 1980s?
People came forward and rang in. They stated that they recognised the reconstruction of the girl's face and said that it was Karen Price.
Oh, hello. I think I recognise the girl in the picture.
Hello, I'm telephoning about the photograph of the girl in the paper.
As a result of a massive publicity campaign, two social workers rang the incident room at Cardiff and gave us the name of the person they thought resembled the impression. And as a result of that, we were able to identify the remains in the carpet as that of the girl, Karen Price, from Cardiff.
No one had been looking for her, and police had no idea that she was even missing. Police spoke to Karen's parents. They took DNA to see if the body was that of their daughter. and the police investigation discovered that Karen Price had been living in a children's home and had run away in 1981.
Karen was 15 when this photograph was taken, a few months before she disappeared. She'd been in care since she was 10, but in July 1981, she absconded from the Maesa Eglise Assessment Centre in Pontypridd. Very little is known about what happened to her from then on, but she was known to hang around the bus station at Wood Street, opposite Cardiff Central Railway Station. Detectives are very anxious for any help they can get from anyone who knew Karen or thinks they might have met her. This is Big Aste's Cafe, just in front of the bus station. Did you eat here in the summer of 1981? When Karen had run away from homes before, and she'd done so several times, she often came here for a coffee. And in the early 80s, lots of youngsters used to hang around outside the Empire Pool in Wood Street. Do you remember Karen?
This wasn't the first time she'd run away from home, but she didn't return on this particular occasion. Nobody reported her missing, not even the social workers at the home where she lived. She then later turned to prostitution. In 1991, Idris Ali and Alan Charlton were apparently alleged to be her pimps. They had been arrested. Following his arrest on suspicion of murder on the 23rd of February 1990, Mr. Charlton was interviewed 11 times, but he consistently denied any part in Karen Price's death. On the 19th to 20th of February, he gave an account of glue sniffing, drug taking, and casual sex in the summer of 1981, and the fact that they were her pimps. Not only that, Mr. Allen had lived on the estate. And as they went to trial, the court heard that Mr. Ali admitted manslaughter over his involvement in Karen's death and was released from jail, having served 3 years and 9 months behind bars. He pleaded guilty at the time on the basis that this particular person that gave evidence, the key witness, was accurate. She had said that she had been there at the time when Mr. Charlton had attacked Karen Price at his flat in Fitsham Embankment. There was a particular witness who was not named. She told the jury that she often ran away from the centre, but never with Karen Price. Her friends used to hang around outside in the cafe and in Cardiff, and she met Karen Price there several occasions. They apparently sniffed glue when on the run as vulnerable children. This particular witness provided sexual services for money and sometimes gave Mr. Ali half of her proceeds. She knew Mr. Carlton as Alan. He was a doorman at one of the clubs. She had had sex with him on the ground floor flat number 29, Fitsham Embankment. She gave him half the money, and when she refused to behave in the way he wished, he cut her leg with a penknife. A few days later, she and Karen Price went with Mr. Charlton and Ali to the same room at number 29 Fitsham Embankment, where they were sniffing glue again. Mr. Charlton asked her and Karen Price to get on the bed naked and pose for photos, but this particular witness refused, and Mr. Carlton slapped her face. Karen Price intervened. He turned on her and punched and slapped her until she fell over. Mr. Ali tried to pull Mr. Carlton off of her when he carried on hitting Karen Price. She was too scared to watch, and when Mr. Carlton stopped, there was blood from Karen Price's mouth and she did not respond. Mr. Carlton said she was dead. He put her on the bed, went out and returned with what looked like some white curtain wire. He turned Karen Price over, tied her hands behind her back and put the carrier bag over her head. He removed her pants and had sex with her when she was dead. Mr. Charlton then brought in what looked like a rug. Both Mr. Ali and Mr. Charlton lifted Karen Price from the bed onto the rug and carried her outside. This particular witness was in the corner crying when both men returned after about 10 minutes with dirty hands. Apparently this witness said that Mr. Charlton warned her to say nothing or she would end up in the same way as Karen Price. Ali advised her to say nothing and seemed as scared as she was. She did not tell anyone because she was too afraid. She did not see either Mr. Carlton or Ali ever again. She was questioned at length at trial about what she told police in January and February. She denied making up the story to accord with Mr. Ali's version. The prosecution pointed to the fact Ali had apparently also been there, but did nothing to contribute to her death or stop it. The court heard that Mr. Ali admitted holding Karen's hands while Mr. Charlton beat her, but he said he only did so because he was afraid of Mr. Charlton and didn't intend for her to suffer serious harm. And Mr. Charlton was charged with murder. Alan Charlton is still serving life sentence. The Criminal Cases Review Commission said there had been concerns about the alleged oppressive handling of key witnesses by officers and alleged breaches of police regulations. It became known as the body in the carpet, or Little Miss Nobody. The remains had been discovered in the carpet. It said that Mr. Charlton was from Bridgewater in Somerset, but he was living in Fitzhammon Embankment at the time that she went missing. Now, he was convicted on the 26th of February 1991 at Cardiff Crown Court and was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 15 years, but he remains in jail more than 20 years later. In 1994, Alan Charlton's appeal was heard alongside that of co-defendant Idris Ali, both of who were apparently Karen's pimps. The court dismissed Alan Charlton's appeal but quashed Ali's conviction.